was Kentucky, Tennessee's most important game of the year? That's the question I want to pose to you right now. And I want to go with your answer first, Caleb, before we get to four downs. And does Tennessee beat Kentucky without four players that I selected? We're going to get to that later in the program. But first, and it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com, was Kentucky Tennessee's most important win of the year? I ask you that right now. Caleb Calhoun, what say you, sir, before we get to four downs? And I'm going to tell you why.
Yes, it was absolutely Tennessee's most important one of the year. And some people may say Texas A&M. It's Kentucky. And it's not just because it was like, some people will say, well, it's an SEC East football game or whatever. No, it was because Tennessee alleviated multiple concerns that we had about the program with their win at Kentucky. We questioned what they could do on the road. We questioned Joe Milton. We questioned a lot of things that you're going to get to, I'm sure. But the way they won, winning on the road in a night game, these are questions about Tennessee that we've had for now 2 years. So to win in this fashion, yeah, it was their most important win of the year. And honestly, like the Alabama win last year is the biggest win Josh Heupel's had as head coach. We all agreed with that. But in terms of representing where Tennessee stands as a program, these wins over Texas A&M and Kentucky, I think, say a lot more about Josh Heupel and the program he's got right now than the win over Alabama did last year.
Completely easy slip up if it's Butch Jones or Derek Dooley. You go to Kentucky, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if under those coaches you slip up. I'm going to tell you why it is the biggest win for Tennessee this year, and it's not Texas A&M, and it's four downs. Brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. As I mentioned, best prices, best service in the biz in Knoxville with over 40 years of combined experience. Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. I'll tell you what, he's going to take care of you. That's AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Here we go.
Four downs. Four questions. Four answers. The Dave Hooker Show. Four downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So usually I ask questions. I'm going to use four downs as statements, and I'm going to tell you why this was Tennessee's most important win of the season. And as Caleb just alluded to, the most important win for Tennessee since the Alabama game last year. Even more important than the Clemson game. And I'm going to tell you why right now. First, Cooper Mace. What do people need to do if they want to be a part of the program Off the Hook Sports, which included on a Sunday Fred White, and it also included Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays. By the way, we'll get to today's tough question that involves Cooper Mays. But what do people need to do, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, so do that right now. Here is why, and I'm going to tell you, not ask you, but I want your comments as well, and I want Caleb's input. But I'm going to tell you why this was Tennessee's most important win of the year. And I've got four reasons. Number one, and they're going to be in ascending order.
Coop here. First down.
First down, Coop, Dante Thornton. The Vols didn't give up on Dante Thornton, made a couple catches against the Wildcats. When, let's be honest, Caleb, you and I had practically thrown him on the trash heap and had every reason to do so. Josh Heupel stuck with him, even was flexible a little bit, which I think Josh Heupel can be too stubborn. He was flexible, played him at wide out a little bit, and didn't give up on Dante Thornton for the season, and they need him. So I thought the fact that they included him was a big factor in how Tennessee's Josh Heupel is not just your average coach, because the coaches I mentioned earlier, he'd be on the trash heap, never seen again.
He'd be on the trash heap, and the coaches would suddenly be throwing digs at them in press conferences the way we were, honestly. I mean, I still remember Derek Dooley saying that Malik Jackson missed practice because his tummy hurt, and you can tell his mama I said that. And it was something like that. Yeah, it was like really, really bad. Malik Jackson, by the way, went on to be a Super Bowl winning NFL Pro Bowler defensive tackle. So, there's that. I think that Josh Heupel, one of the things yes, he's stubborn, but the thing about Josh Heupel is he's stubborn. It's a paradox. He's stubborn in that he believes in him and his system and what he's doing, and he believes in his players, but he's fluid in that he's willing to adjust to what they can do. And we've seen that with Josh Heupel over the years. And he said at his press conference, he said it's more important to look at what a player can do than what they can't do. Well, it looks like Dante Thornton can play wideout, and he can be more effective that way. And also, maybe I underestimated how hurt Dante Thornton was throughout the year. He hasn't been fully healthy since the season started. And so Heupel moved him to wideout. He seemed healthier. And it just, and I think the big thing that Heupel does to try to get players' confidence going is, remember the first pass to Thornton was just kind of a quick screen on the outside to have him gain like 10 yards. And maybe Heupel just did that to get Thornton mentally right. And then Thornton went off. Look, I called Dante Thornton a disgrace. So I went way harder on him than even you did, I think.
Well, the bottom line is Josh Heupel is a coach that wants to keep injuries secret, and I don't blame him for wanting to do that. But at the time, it can at times put a whole lot of pressure on your players, and I thought it did so with Cooper Mays earlier when you're saying, oh, he might go down and play against Florida, when I never believed that was the case. He was not ready. As for Dante Thornton, Smoky Mountain Red said he is better on the outside. He was clearly too concerned about getting hit across the middle. Maybe. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good read by you. Shout out to Smoky Mountain Red on that one. Continue with the message board, and I want to get to it. But first, it's second down. Why Kentucky was the biggest win for the Vols this season?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, second down is this, running back rotation. Okay, let's all talk about how great Tennessee's running backs are. They are very, very good. As a trio, they're the best since the late 90s. We could debate that even if you took the top two, you might take them over Jalen Hurd or Alvin Kamara. I don't want to get caught up in that debate. I want to discuss the fact that Tennessee handled their running back rotation 100% correctly. Let's not forget, we're about a month removed from Tennessee forgetting Dylan Sampson was on the team at Florida. So they handled it well. They went out, they established a power football running game with Jalen Wright. And then what did they do when they saw Dylan Sampson was hot? They stayed with him. You can't handle the running back rotation any better than what Tennessee's coaching staff did against Kentucky. That's a big kudos. That's a step in the right direction. That's one of the reasons why the Kentucky game was Tennessee's most important win of the year.
It was a workhorse type of game that allowed Sampson to go off in the fourth quarter. And it very much reminded me of how USC would run you with Lindale White for 3 quarters. And then by the time you were gassed and tired, they turn on Reggie Bush and Reggie Bush goes off. That's what Tennessee did. They were like, we're going to give you mostly a dose of Jalen Wright, who is the most complete back on the team. And then we'll give you a dose of Jabari Small, who only had about 3.5 yards a carry, 36 yards. But it was a workhorse 36 yards, wasn't it, Dave? Like, it was yards you fight for. And then after being gassed, having to tackle Small and Wright, Heupel says, okay, now let's give the ball to our best playmaker when he has it in his hands at the position. Here comes Dylan Sampson, and Sampson turns loose on them in the fourth quarter. And I think Kentucky was tired having to constantly tackle the other physical backs by that point. And now here comes the fresh guy who also is the best player with the ball in his hands that they're having to deal with.
Absolutely. Take part in our poll question that is on YouTube. We'd love for you to do that. We'll get to that a little bit later, but you can see it if you're already online. So thanks for those that were already on board and willing to go. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Tennessee's win against Kentucky was the most important game/win of the year because it's coming off the Alabama loss. And I said this, I guess with Fred White yesterday on that Sunday show with Fred, brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions. And here's what I said. I said, Fred, I just really felt like, and I said it to Cooper too, I really felt like he was down after the Alabama game because he felt like Tennessee should have won that game. Tennessee does get somewhat physically manhandled in the second half. That never feels good. It's a tough physical game, but it was a heartbreaking emotional loss. So coming off the Bama game, Tennessee, the score doesn't indicate as much, but was in control, ready to play from the get. We've talked about night games as opposed to morning practice, which Tennessee does. Kentucky does afternoon practice. So, yeah, I'll just say it again. This team's bounce back factor is as good as any Tennessee football team that I've seen, and I've been covering them for about 25 years. I didn't have to see it in the 98 team because they didn't lose. But I think that's a monstrous thing coming off the Bama loss. I don't think that we truly realize how much that hurt that locker room on the inside.
Yeah, no, it was monstrous. I mean, that was an emotionally draining game. And let's not forget this, Dave. Not only was that emotionally draining, but Kentucky was sitting at home last week, relaxing.
That's right.
They were
They had an off week. They had an off week.
Yep, they had an off week, ready to go this week, fully fresh. Night game at home, and Tennessee scores on the first drive. Tennessee stops them and then scores a touchdown on the first drive. It wasn't like Tennessee took a while to get going. They immediately got going in this game. That is a huge statement. And that's why I say, yes, did Tennessee struggle technically a little more with Kentucky than Missouri did? Yeah, but Kentucky was coming off a blowout loss to Georgia when they faced Missouri. They're coming off a bye when they faced Tennessee, and Tennessee's coming off an emotional loss at Alabama. It's a much more difficult game for Tennessee than it was for Missouri 2 weeks ago at Kentucky. And these type of things matter. So yeah, no, it was huge. And you're right, the bounce back. I'm not going to go as far as to say the best I've seen, because I still remember, I think of the 2004 team that lost to Auburn 34-10 and then went and beat Georgia on the road the next week with Eric Ainge as a freshman. Mm-hmm. That one was a pretty good bounce back team as a freshman, as with a freshman quarterback. But I understand your point. This one is a really good one.
All right, 4th down. Is that right, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
It's Joe Milton. If you hadn't watched football up until Saturday, guys, and you watched Joe Milton, you're a casual SEC fan, you would have said that's one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the SEC. And that's saying something, because I'm not sure that he was top 10 for a good part of this season. Tennessee has continued to work with Joe Milton. We could have the argument that they should have played Nico and got him ready for next year if you want to, but the simple fact is the Vols have still have plenty to play for, including theoretically a championship. And Joe Milton has gone from ugh to that's pretty interesting. So that's the other down, and the other reason why this was Tennessee's most important win of the year. Joe Milton developed and has become one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, at least as of last week. Let's see what happens going forward, Caleb.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And we asked the question last week, would Tennessee's record be any different with Gaston Moore at quarterback than Joe Milton? Now we can say definitively it would not be the same. They lose to Kentucky last week with Gaston Moore at quarterback, and I'm not so sure they beat Kentucky with Nico at quarterback. I mean, this is where you saw a veteran presence from Joe Milton. Kentucky kept pushing. They kept knocking on the door, and this was a big thing for me, Dave, because I've questioned his – I hate the phrase mental toughness because I don't like to call him mentally weak, but I have felt like Joe Milton panics when things get tight. Every time Kentucky knocked on the door, it seemed like Joe Milton was ready to answer. And he did you ever see him panic when Kentucky got it close?
No, and as a matter of fact, you know what the standout play to me is when he slid and made sure he got his knee down late in the game instead of going out of bounds. That was field awareness. That was the antithesis of jumping out of bounds against against Ole Miss with no time on the clock.
It was. You're right. That was a huge part. That's a very good point. That was the biggest part of the game, was him willing to slide right there. And then, of course, they were able to run out the clock at that point because Kentucky, some people believe, fake an injury because they got caught faking injuries in the game, by the way. I don't know if you saw the clips. And in that one, they faked one and to get forced with a 10-second runoff, which is how Tennessee wins the game, which is kind of really funny. But yeah, no, that was a huge heads-up awareness play. I still think the big play was Joe Milton completing that pass to Ramel Keaton at the end of the first half. Josh Heupel is clearly willing to go into halftime sitting on the 20-17 lead, and Joe Milton completes that pass that only Ramel Keaton throws it in a way only Ramel Keaton could have caught it. And again, that was incredible to me that he makes that throw.
On the message board, White Lightning says that was elite awareness, and David Michaels says that Joe these past 2 weeks is legit.